Hello and welcome to the Making Connections Worcestershire LEP Conference. This session's focused on Healthy Worcestershire, looking at dynamic businesses and how they've coped with the COVID crisis, but also how we're going into an economic recovery. This session's focused on the retail sector, and I'm joined by Phoebe and Sam. Welcome both. Phoebe, first question to you in terms of, I suppose, not just the retail sector, but how have all the sectors coped and what's been the real impact of COVID over these last few months?
I think that as a county we've seen a rather sort of different impact to that which we've seen in other recessions. Certainly we've felt this in the same sort of way as the rest of the country, and I think that was down to having a complete lockdown, whereas in the past Worcestershire's seems to have sort of slipped into recession slightly slower than other areas of the country, but then perhaps sort of levelled out and not risen. We haven't had the highs and the lows. So I think we've seen a real impact. We've certainly seen like 30,000, I think, is the numbers for people who've been furloughed. And, you know, we expect to see an increase, a continued increase in unemployment for the foreseeable.
Okay, and Sam, so certainly from the retail side and the high street, what have you seen in terms of impact on the high street, which there's been plenty in the national news, but how has sort of Worcester and our local towns coped?
I think really it's accelerated where the high street is. We always said the high street was evolving, but COVID has pushed us 5 years on already. And what we've really seen is our independents adapt effectively and efficiently, and they are the true leaders and innovators of the city centre. Without them, I think we would really struggle. We did a recent survey for vacant units at the end of July, and we are still boasting over the national average with 60% independence in the city centre.
That's fantastic. And in terms of footfall, what's that looking like, you know, particularly with the Eat Out to Help Out scheme in August? What has sort of footfall done over the summer period?
So footfall, obviously, it did increase after lockdown. However, we're not back at our stats that we normally have been. But what we have noticed is even though we're reduced on footfall numbers, the spend has been higher, which is really positive to see. And a lot of our independents have adapted online as well. So they've made sure that we can cater for anybody. You don't have to go through the Amazons. You can shop that independent, whether you're isolating or you're a little bit nervous, and part of the city plan has been trying to boost the confidence again and show that Worcester's safe.
And do you think, you know, when people coming back, you know, that adaptation of the high street, so lots of people talk about, oh, the high street's dead or the high street's dying, but actually the picture you're painting is it's not just about retail, it's about other forms of usage in the high street?
By adapting, it's more experience-led. And this is what we've been trying to get across, is we are full of heritage and we're on the same levels as York when you think of what we actually have in our city centre. So it's about coming to the city, exploring, which you can do socially distanced. You don't feel pressured to be in groups of people. You can explore the cathedral, the cobbled streets, Friar Street, and then we've got all the independents that you can enjoy. And they have put everything in place to be able to do this safely for you to experience this.
That's brilliant. And Phoebe, some of our towns around the county as well, have they adapted in a similar kind of way?
Yeah, I think so. We've seen money was given to most of the towns and the city centres to be able to support them to adapt to socially distanced measures, to put in the signage and things, and we've seen that throughout the county, and I think that is helping to instil that confidence in people when they want to go out, carry on, you know, meeting friends for a coffee, having something to eat, going shopping. They're able to do that and know that they can do it in a safe and secure way.
And support for businesses. So, you know, what support's out there for retailers or other businesses who are on the high street?
There's a wealth of support that's available. I mean, the government has been really, really reactive in terms of supporting local businesses. So we've seen fantastic support come through, and these are grants and other support that's available through Worcestershire Business Central. So that's the growth hub for the county. If anyone's interested, they can contact a member of the team. The website address is business-central.co.uk, and on that you can find out about the wealth of support. And I'm not just talking about grants and funding, I'm talking about support that you can get through peer-to-peer networks, one-to-one business advisor support. Sometimes you just need to just be directed and sort of have your hand held through this sort of maze that is business support, and certainly that the team at the Growth Hub are able to do that. But they're working really closely with people like the BIDs. Worcestershire's now got 3 business improvement districts, and I think that's really important to have that strong relationship so that they can recognise where those businesses, perhaps they can't support them, but perhaps it's something that the BID is able to support with.
Okay, and Sam, coming on to that, so there's Redditch, Kidderminster have got a BID as well, but Worcester BID, what role do you play in kind of pointing those businesses to the support that they need?
So we know how valuable the support is that the BIDs can deliver, and something that we've seen from this is how multi-partner agencies really have come into play with this. So working with the other BIDs, like Phoebe said, is key for us. It's not just about our area and our district, especially in a pandemic like this. It's looking at the bigger picture. We need our county to survive. So we've been working with the Worcestershire County Council. We have been reaching out to Kidderminster BID. We've been working with the policing teams, with the city councils, and making sure that we all work together. That's how we've been able to provide the support that the BID can't just give, but all our other partners have available to them.
Okay. And so looking forwards, I mean, obviously we look like there are going to be several layers of lockdown that are going to be announced. But looking forward, how do you see that sort of high street and probably nighttime economy really sort of going forward in the next 6 to 12 months?
It's going to be a struggle, but Worcester, actually as a smaller city, is going to benefit from this in the long run, because we're watching the office sectors stop commuting, going into the bigger cities, which is where our retail sector at the moment and our hospitality is suffering by not having office workers going in and out for their lunch. So by having our population stay in the county, there's more opportunity for hubs to be set up for you to be working in our city instead of Birmingham, London, which will really benefit our hospitality side and our retail, keeping it in our county.
And Phoebe, same question to you in terms of the wider county. How do you see our county towns kind of in probably the next 6, 12, 18 months, and what are some of the trends that we're going to see?
I think we're going to see different, as you mentioned, the different levels of lockdown coming in. But what I think has been really, really clear is how well businesses have adapted. If you go into any coffee shop or restaurant, they really have got it together. The social distancing is really good. So what I'm really hopeful is that if we do go into a second lockdown or anything like that, these businesses are able to stay open in some shape or form. I certainly, anecdotally have seen businesses all over my social media now that you didn't used to sell online but now are. And I think, those are the things that are going to keep people in jobs, keep people trading. And also, for us, we're going to be able to continue to support our independents and our local retailers.
Thank you both. That was really helpful, very informative, and certainly kicks off this session in terms of retail and the impact we're seeing on the high street. Thank you. Moving on in this section, we're now going to look at from the health angle in terms of the importance of kind of health versus the economy in this period where COVID's really affected the local economy. With me I've got Dr. Kath Cobain, who's the Director of Public Health. Kath, it'd be good if you could describe your role and how that fits into national policy, because obviously that working together with central government.
Yeah, absolutely, and hi everybody. So directors of public health and upper tier, so in this case county council, are responsible for improving and protecting the health of the population. Clearly, you can't do that as one person. It's very much working in partnership, and thinking about, the economy, having a vibrant economy, and I include having a vibrant nighttime economy, and that is a really good thing for health and well-being. But thinking about the current situation and where we're at with communicable disease, and I don't want you going away thinking that public health is all about communicable disease by the end of this, but certainly reflecting on the current situation, I've got a team, not a very large team, in fact, a team of 30 odd people, and they've worked really quickly with the wider county council and partners, the districts, and including, that Gary's been on our boards and things like that as well, is making sure that we've got a system in place that we can make sure we're doing the best thing for Worcestershire. So we've been doing various things in that. We've been providing data and intelligence to the whole system, and we work quite quickly to do that with the hospital trust, etc., and getting the data flows working well. Also establishing the Here to Help system to support people at the start of lockdown. And supporting high-risk settings. Those are care homes, schools, workplaces, to prevent outbreaks occurring. We really focus quite heavily on communications and engagement with the public, with businesses, with others. We also published our outbreak control plan, which sets out how we will respond to outbreaks. And we have a 7-day response now, operational response. So we've shifted very much into a service perspective from a public health perspective. So we've got our local outbreak response team that's available to respond to cases and situations, and to make sure those run as smoothly as possible. So, we're also having to quickly sort of understand and enact national policy and support others. So understanding their role in preventing and controlling COVID-19. And as I said, that we've also got a number of other essential public health duties. So we've been walking the tightrope of making sure that we're doing all our business as usual stuff, as well as managing the outbreak. So that's what we've been up to in terms of sort of thinking about delivering it in terms of national policy.
Great stuff. That's really helpful in terms of kind of outlining the kind of role and the service you played. How do you think the Worcestershire communities, both the business community and the wider community, really responded during lockdown?
So the business community have been absolutely fantastic, and we've worked with our regulatory services partners Worcestershire Regulatory Services who work within our outbreak response team, and they have been absolutely key in making sure, because they before this worked with businesses. And I think where we've seen issues occurring, or rules being broken, if you like, they're inadvertent mistakes, and we were able to quickly sort of work with them on the ground. And I think we've got a few situations where we've worked very closely with businesses. So the EVG outbreak at the packaging plant in just outside Evesham, and we worked really hard. And when we were able to implement something that worked really well, and then was actually able to be shared around other businesses, etc. And thinking about sort of taxi situations, lots of different situations where the main thing has been to kind of establish what's going on and to work to make sure, because it is confusing, and the guidance was changing very rapidly, and I expect that will start to happen again. But it's really about those local relationships, and it's making sure that we're tackling it from that perspective rather than go in and finger wag, and because I think that's worked really well for us, and I think the local response has worked really well, and that's been the feedback that we've got, particularly from schools. So and the care homes as well, that where our local teams have been able to work with people has been of absolute benefit.
And working on that local level that you described, obviously the national picture's focused on kind of shortages of PPE or care homes and the incidents there. Kind of how has Worcestershire kind of translated compared to the national?
Yeah, well, Worcestershire generally, so we're generally a little behind, as in terms of numbers behind the national. We've got a population that is older. We've got a population who lives in more space circumstances and who have engaged really well in this with us. So we have seen lower numbers, which has been great because it's given us extra breathing space. But we have, just to stress that we've pretty much followed the national course as well. But thinking about PPE actually, and PPEs are really the personal protective equipment is a really good news story in Worcestershire. We worked really hard from the beginning to establish good supply chains of this, very directly, sort of led by one of our teams at County Hall. And we were given sort of deliveries as well, which added to that stock, and we still have very good stocks of PPE. So it's we've been in a better situation, I would say, than nationally has been within PPE, and we've developed whole home systems for care home testing. We've done things really quickly, when there was issues about testing a few weeks ago, we were getting feedback from essential workers, and essential and critical workers, so those working in health, schools, of those things that the economy needs us to keep going, really, so that they're able to get their children to school, and they can get to work. So we were able to set up a testing site for that within a week. So I'd say that the big learning point for me from this has been how we've all worked together, because not one person can solve this, and I think locally we have done that really quickly and under considerable pressure.
And those public health messages, do you think they've kind of got out there and really landed with the business community in Worcestershire?
Well, I think that certainly the work that we've done with businesses has been well received, and businesses have been really engaged in doing the right thing. And that's all that we're trying to do. We're in a fast-moving situation, and advice, guidance, the situation will change. And I think what I've seen is that people have been really adaptable to that, and to enable that working well. That's kind of, yeah. So I think, yeah, absolutely. So even whenever we've seen things that haven't gone well, we've been able to quickly get in and sort of get those understandings in a different way, and to understand the perspective that the businesses are coming from as well. I don't think anybody's doing anything in a way to damage public health. I think we've seen in Worcestershire a real sort of joining up together and a shared understanding of what we need to do, and to do the right thing consistently.
Fabulous. And you mentioned it was a kind of fast-changing environment. Obviously, with yesterday's announcement about several layers of lockdown, how do you think the business community can really keep up to date with that kind of ever-changing environment?
Yeah, well, we want to continue working hard with our businesses around that. Also, we've got everything's on our county council website. We've got a dedicated website for this, and we've got a communications and engagement group as well that we have representation from businesses on there, and really interested to hear feedback from businesses as well, and to assist with them. We can assist with various practical things like posters, signage, all those kind of things. Or if there's things that you're really struggling with, please do contact our outbreak response team or put ideas in together, because we still have we've got an amount of money to make sure that we're doing as much as we can to get the messages out there. So if you've got a really good idea, what I'd say is, please email either me or Gary. Let us know that idea. And sometimes these can be really simple things. I think in one business we were able to supply them with particular posters, get the printing work done and everything, and sort of take the pressure off that. So it can be something sometimes really simple that makes that difference and makes things easier for people to follow.
And you've emphasised that difference between our local sort of partnerships and the national, and that seems to be the sort of topic of debate in the news. Do you think we should be given more powers locally to kind of decide how we lock down, or equally, what sort of advice we're giving?
So we're from a lockdown perspective. I do have some limited powers as far as like sort of closing, and this is not something that I like to sort of kind of think about or discuss. Really, is I do have powers that to close down specific businesses or other settings when but I have to have evidence of a severe and imminent risk to public health. I think as far as the levels that the levels that are being announced, those are nationally driven levels, and it's working within that framework to do the best that we can for the Worcestershire population. Obviously, there's some really simple things, like if we're all following them, like sort of washing hands, keeping our distance when at all possible, and wearing face coverings when we can't keep our distance, and doing that consistently. That really does work. And obviously, the other thing is like, if you've got and businesses can play a key role in this. If you've got staff that are unwell, they really should not be coming into work. We should, where people go, this virus goes, and what we know is it's pretty infectious. So if people have got symptoms, and we're really stoical, aren't we? We kind of go, oh, I don't feel so bad, I'll continue on to work, and work is really good for us. So generally that's good. But the problem with this virus, and particularly as we enter winter, is that indoor environments where people are close together is an ideal kind of spreading vector for people. So I think it's really important just to keep those really simple messages in your head for your workforce. Make sure people, if they are unwell, however mild that can be, and some people, and this is the other thing with this virus, it can be very mild to very severe, so it can be difficult for people to, and in the past I've been guilty of that. I think, oh, it's just this, it's just that, I'll be fine. But we've got a situation at the minute whereby we've got a novel virus. So we've only had this virus amongst us and with us in the world since the end of December last year. So we're getting to know more about it. But do we know everything about it? Do we, we haven't got long periods of time where we've studied it and we know how it behaves in different populations, etc. So those measures are so important. It's so important to really break that chain of transmission in any way that we can all do, because ultimately that will keep us all moving forward, because we can keep businesses and sectors open, and people making sure they're safe as well within those sectors.
Brilliant. And you mentioned that, if there's plenty of places to go for information, kind of, if a business is unsure, where would you direct them to that they should go and find out some more?
Yeah. So the County Council website has got everything on there. So there's a dedicated COVID-19 public health website, and our outbreak response team contact details are on there as well. So please email, or there's a phone number available there as well. And that's, the website's up all the time. The outbreak response team is available 9 until 6 every day, Monday through Sunday. So those things are there for you to utilise. There's also, I believe, Here to Help Business, which is more about which is kind of the offshoot from the Here to Help, where we're helping people. So I think there's that as well, but they're all available on the County Council website.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kath. This session's been great. It's looked at the balance between health and the economy. It's looked at how businesses across all sectors in Worcestershire are adapting and really making a difference. We're really keen to get your feedback. Please participate in the polls, but equally, if you're looking for that sort of support, Kath's identified the County Council website, but also Worcestershire Business Central is really a great place to go, that you can find all the information you need Thank you very much. It's been a great session and I look forward to your feedback. In this section, we're looking at the impact of COVID and how businesses have adapted. We're looking at several sectors, and today I've got with me Dale from DRP. Welcome, Dale.
Pleasure.
So obviously COVID struck and that really changed the business. Perhaps you could outline what changes really happened in that initial phase of the lockdown.
Yeah, and it happened really quickly. It was unprecedented, the speed of change. So beginning of March, we got a whole program of particularly live events and exhibitions all booked for the year, and particularly in March itself. And within days, it was like a pack of cards. It just all disappeared overnight. Everything went, and that is over 50% of our sales relies around live events and exhibitions. So it was a bit of a shock to the system, and we had to then look at how we're going to cope with that. Clearly, on those ones that cancelled with a few days' notice, we'd got cancellation fees and everything else. But we knew as time was running on, and we could see into the future, those cancellation fees would not be around. So we were going to start to lose those sales. And as we sit today, we're probably going to be down 55% on sales on the year, which is significant to deal with. Yeah, absolutely.
And what sort of things have you put in place then to kind of keep business going, keep the team moving, and keep kind of those sales coming in?
Well, there was lots of things we had to do, and I've been around long enough and lived through recessions. Nothing quite as big as this, but the key is to act really quickly, and speed is of the key, and cash is king. Forget profits, that's out the door now. We're just interested in cash. And look after and protect the people, because whether it's a recession or whether it's a downturn, whatever it is, you're always going to tip up. So you're always going to have that future in mind, that at some point we're going to spike out of this and we're going to go, and we want to protect the resource for when that happens. So we put in place basically two words: protect and opportunity, and that's what we've been working with since the beginning of March. So the first thing was we needed to get the team safe, so working from home. And last year we invested enormous amounts of money into IT and Office 365, and thank goodness we did, because that allowed us to virtually all the team, 340 odd people, could work from home. And we've not had a major issue with the system at all. It's been fantastic that we've been able to communicate, work as teams, and people have been comfortable to be there. So at one point in this building, the studio that normally has 270, 300 people, we were down to half a dozen people for weeks and weeks and weeks. It was a bit eerie in the building.
Imagine the size of the building.
Yeah, well, that's right. So social distancing wasn't a problem here at all, and still isn't, to be honest. We still haven't got a lot of the people back. So that was the first thing: protect the team and get that working. Second was live events are not going to come back anytime soon, and in fact we haven't got a single booking going forward into the future now. So we need some alternatives. Digital, clearly we can operate digital anywhere globally, and we don't need physical space, and also people still need digital, in fact more so. So let's support that team and grow that team as much as we can. Video, very similar, though we couldn't do any location filming. But the big thing that we've done for many years is virtual. For about 25 years, virtual meetings has been something we've always been doing, but very, very small, very tiny. And so we saw the opportunity beginning in March, right, let's promote then to our clients virtual meetings. And we went out with a test run, converted one of the studios within 24 hours, written scripts, and pushed it out, and we had nearly 1,000 people online watching it.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest selling point that we'd had there, that all of a sudden then people know that we can do virtual. Since then, it's been that whole period of how do we shift the business into virtual, while keeping digital going, while our comms and our video side, but actually all the teams have worked together. Where could we redeploy people into virtual, although they haven't necessarily got the skills, the camera skills, the editing, but they can do other things, and they can help out. And the team have been absolutely fantastic in that side of being what can I do to help. So we redeployed a lot of people. We furloughed quite a lot of people, although virtually now furlough's gone, so I don't think we've got anybody on furlough now. And we're now running up to 10 studios flat out to try and get studio space. I would say we're probably producing more new content than the BBC at the moment, you know, which isn't difficult, I suppose, with the repeats. But you know, the studios, you walk around here and you see something going on all the time, and it's having to be done in a safe way. So we wrote a studio environment safety pack right back in March, that we can keep everything to a minimum in terms of people, remote cameras, all that sort of stuff. So without virtual, we'd have been in trouble.
Wow, yeah. And how have you kept that kind of team culture? Yeah, we've done the podcast on leadership and management.
Yeah.
Participated in. How have you kept that sort of team culture going?
Well, using the technology. So we encouraged every team that they should have some sort of team meeting, some daily, and still they do daily, in the coffee mornings and dance-a-thons and sing-a-thons and all sorts of the daft things that happen. And we encourage that to happen. We also encourage people that, you know, the 9 till 5 culture, forget that. This is not time-driven now, it's task-driven. So if you feel that, well, I've got to, you know, put the kids to bed and I've got to deal with the family and I'm at home and everything else, do it when you can. So we introduced an enormous amount of flexibility into the business, which is still running. And we were talking about this probably Christmas time last year. Wouldn't it be great to have that working from home and that flexible approach? So be careful what you wish for, because that's what we've ended up with within months of that. And then communicate with the team on a weekly basis. So we have a full team meeting. Sometimes it's only 15 minutes. Last week it was an hour. It was over an hour. We go through everything that we need to in terms of the finances, how we're doing cash-wise, how we're doing sales-wise, celebrate some of the successes and some of the case studies. Quite a lot of the team come on and join that and are very proud of some of the stuff they're doing. And that's really helped to keep the team gelled together. We've had some fun stuff. We had our conference a few weeks ago, and we had a big evening party, all done virtually as well, competitions. Excellent. So lots and lots of communication, because I think I can't stress enough, you have to communicate and over-communicate constantly with the team. So even if there's nothing to report there's nothing to report. Yeah. So important, yeah.
And Dale, tell us some of the positives that this kind of opportunity and this period's given to the business.
I think for me, it's all about innovation and creating that pioneering spirit. And we've certainly taken advantage of that. The team have been great. We're coming up with new ideas. You cut through traditional red tape and processes to get to an end game much faster. So things that would have taken maybe years sometimes to develop have taken months to develop, and we've had to get it to market very, very quickly. So my advice to anybody would be, look at innovation, look at where we can change, what can we change, and we're creating a new norm, and you can do this incredibly quickly in these times of crisis.
Fantastic. We've had Dr. Kath Cobain on, and she's really been talking about that kind of public health element. Kind of businesses getting advice. It's sort of the guidance seems to change, and we'll see a change this week. Yeah. How have you kept up to date with some of that government?
Well, we've kept a very careful eye on everything and trying to take a balanced approach of the government, the health experts, and then also looking at ourselves. And we've got our own safety team here, health and safety team, taking a view of what are our actions then going forward. And in some cases, we've gone beyond what the government advice has been to keep the building safe, not just this building, but our other buildings, and the people safe. So we've acted quickly. We've encouraged people to stay at home. We didn't encourage people back, but we also knew through some people's maybe mental health, they were getting a bit feeling isolated at home, so they needed to come in. So we schedule people that can come in at certain times.
Brilliant. That's great. Yeah. Thank you, Dale, for your support, and we certainly look forward. You're certainly one of those businesses that adapted and really working through the current times. We know we've got tough times ahead, but I think we can all have some confidence that we're really working safely in Worcestershire and also kind of making sure the economy stays as healthy as it can be. Hello. And when looking at the kind of COVID and the recovery, obviously it's been really important to get visitors back into Worcestershire, and we've had to do that in a safe way. But I think hearing from one of those businesses that's reopened is really important. And joining me is Helen from the Severn Valley Railway. Hi Helen, can you give us a bit of your role and then equally what you've done since the 1st of August?
Okay, I'm Helen Smith. I'm the new General Manager of Severn Valley Railway. I joined back in November, so started off with the flooding in February and then obviously the pandemic in March. So it's been a dramatic 12 months at the Severn Valley Railway. But yeah, so my role is to run the Severn Valley Railway as a visitor attraction, also a heritage attraction as well. So it's kind of that balance between, you know, making enough income to actually develop and maintain the railway, and also making sure that I'm looking after the heritage for the future. And
so what's it like since you reopened on the 1st of August and bringing visitors back into the railway?
It's been an incredibly challenging time. We've had to completely rethink how we prepare for visitors, what the visitor needs are going to be. On the other flip side of things, you know, looking after the volunteers, because just to open the railway takes about 200 volunteers a day. We have 1,700 volunteers, and we would normally welcome about 250,000 visitors to the railway from all around the region. So that is a huge amount of people to look after, and we've had to completely rethink what we actually do at Severn Valley Railway. So we went to a more bookable day trip. So the idea is that you book into your private compartment, which means that you can socially distance from everyone else. And that's a pre-booked event rather than turning up on the day and just jumping off on and off the train as you want. So it was a completely different business plan to anything that we'd done before. So we had to rethink everything: how you book in, how we sell tickets, how we welcome you, how we make sure you're safe, how we check tickets. So we've gone to using wristbands rather than checking physical tickets, so that you can do that at a distance. I can't think of anything that is the same as it was before. So it's been a lot of work, but you know, we've done it really well.
Yeah, and looking forward, does that give you quite a bit of optimism that you can keep working through what is a kind of ever-changing situation?
Yeah, I mean, luckily our compartments take 6 people, so it's absolutely fitted in with the government guidelines, which is luck rather than judgment. We've also found that the visitors really enjoying having a set day out, so that they know exactly when to arrive, when the day is going to be finished, and what's going to happen throughout the day. And the visitor is really enjoying that, because they feel like you know, that they could just relax and enjoy the day. They don't have to worry about catching a specific train. We're dealing with all of that. So when they get off at the engine house, which is our visitor attraction, we'll announce, you know, when the train's about to set off, so that they know when to go back to the platform. It's all managed for them. If they want to pre-book food as well, we've got pre-booked food packages, drinks packages. Everything is much more organised and prepared and ready for people, you know, to make sure that everybody feels safe.
No, that's brilliant to hear, and certainly means that, you know, we can start to bring in tourists and visitors back into the county safely. And are you seeing people from not just, I suppose, Worcestershire and your normal catchment, but people from further afield as well?
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that we've reintroduced is our diesel days. So obviously we're a steam railway as well as a diesel heritage railway. So some of the diesel days have seen people travel from Cornwall, Scotland, all over the country to come and ride on our diesel locomotives. So we are seeing a huge demand. Actually, one of the challenges is the demand is actually there, but we can't. We've got to stop kind of letting people in at a certain point. So actually, if we could open longer hours and, you know, do more stuff, then that would be great. But, you know, we can't do that. So we've got to limit numbers for safety and to make sure the volunteers feel safe. You know, for example, we're pretty much 75% sold out for Christmas at the moment already. We wouldn't be normally that far ahead with the sales. So demand is there. It's just being able to meet that demand that's more challenging, because we can't let as many people through the system.
Yeah, and sort of your view of the kind of wider tourism sector for Worcestershire, have you been talking to other attractions and other operators in the county, and what's been their feedback?
Yeah, I think the demand is definitely there from the family market. I think everybody found the summer to be quite successful as long as they were able to open. I think once we get to September, October, this has been more challenging. October half term will be fine, and then Christmas will be fine, but that's because it's the family market. So if you're dealing with elderly visitors, then obviously that's much more challenging, and that's where we've seen the sort of drop in numbers. It's challenging for everyone at the moment, though. So I think every single part of the business has had to be rethought. So yeah, we're going for a much more local feel. So we're trying to, wherever we can, support local businesses, buying local food and suppliers for the shop, etc. Trying to make sure that we're helping wherever we can to help people in the local area survive this pandemic.
No, I mean, certainly credit to you and the team and all the work you've done in terms of bringing the Severn Valley Railway, because it is a big attractor for Worcestershire and bringing people in. So full credit to you and the team.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So in this section, we're focusing on the international markets and international opportunities during the economic crisis. We're really focused on exporting and inward investment, which is why I'm joined by Phoebe from the LEP and Nick virtually from the export team. So Nick, what have exporters experienced during sort of COVID and the economic crisis?
It's been a bit of a mixed bag. Needless to say, Gary, loss of business, substantial in many cases. Breaks in supply chains have caused delays in manufacturing for re-export. Some distributors have disappeared completely. And, the whole kind of restrictions on travel haven't helped. Obviously, quarantining, cancellation of exhibitions, or postponing of exhibitions has meant that many companies have been unable to market themselves in the traditional way. And even, guys that are sent out to service and maintain particular products have been facing issues of getting to those markets, getting back from those markets. So it's not been good. But I suppose, on the positive side, for most of my clients, they seem to have fared rather well. But I think that's more due to the fact that they are businesses who are exporters or businesses who are looking to export. And those types of business culturally tend to be more resilient and innovative to adapt and cope very quickly with changes of this nature. Several of my clients have actually done extremely well diversifying into COVID-19 related products such as sanitizer, face masks, visors and other equipment, and I've seen an actual increase in turnover and growth as well.
Brilliant. And so from the point of view of businesses who were exporting into certain markets, what steps should they take to sort of re-establish those export markets?
I think they need to study, look to understand how the market has been affected, and look at their whole kind of route to market issue. Is the existing route to market still viable? Do they need to investigate alternatives? Perhaps accelerate the e-commerce option, diversify into new product lines, new sectors, enter new markets. All this can be achieved in terms of marketing virtually and undertaking research through our network overseas. We have an extensive network overseas throughout the embassies, high commissions and consulates and third-party support organisations as well. So come to us, we can help.
And do you think COVID will have a long-term impact on the kind of export of goods?
Yeah, undeniably it will do. Unpredictability is the real issue here. There's going to be a lot of changes. There's going to be, I think, more dependency on virtual marketing, virtual events, which is okay in some markets, but in other markets, such as the Middle East, maybe, Central Asia, China, where face-to-face is so important. Relationships tend to be as important as terms and conditions. And so there could be a loss of potential business with the inability to kind of have a physical presence in those markets.
Okay, and coming to you, Phoebe, in terms of inward investment from foreign-owned companies, what have we seen in Worcestershire?
It's been a bit of a mixed bag, really. We're still seeing inquiries coming in from overseas, which is really, really positive to see. Quite often that's because they're trying to access supply chains and things over here, which, you know, that's great. And we're certainly able to service those inquiries once they come into the county. That being said, you know, I think we have now got to pause and reflect a bit and look at what our strategy is for inward investment. And certainly we're seeing that nationally with the Department for International Trade are actually looking at what is the UK strategy for inward investment. Are we still wanting to attract the same markets? Do we want to work with different areas of the world? And so we're working really closely with our colleagues at Department for International Trade to ensure that what we're trying to do in the county matches that nationally. And
we've had those relationships with the US in terms of Maryland, in terms of Europe. You know, have those relationships continued? Absolutely. We are just on the cusp of re-signing our Memorandum of Understanding with Maryland. And that's going to see a fantastic 3-year action plan come to life, which is going to involve, hopefully, some trips abroad where we can take our businesses over to the States, but also bring the States over here. We want to be engaging with our universities and some of our more creative and tech sectors and bringing those guys in, but also what we're seeing with Maryland is it's a really nice little picture, but they work very closely with Belfast. So certainly it's a wealth of opportunities for our Worcestershire businesses. Great stuff. And Nick, obviously EU exit is also on the horizon. What are you and the team doing to support those Worcestershire exporters to kind of work through the impact of what could be EU exit?
Firstly, Gary, you know, we're saying it's important that whether there's a deal or no deal, the changes on the 1st of January are going to be massive, and companies need to start preparing now rather than leave it too late. We have and will continue to signpost organisations to relevant information sources, such as our own EU exit webinars covering all aspects of the procedures, DIT exit webinars. You know, we've got, you know, we can refer companies to government websites to give them updates on a continual basis. We're offering via the Chamber of Commerce a range of EU exit related training courses, and we have a consultancy firm available to answer any country specific inquiries, again via the Chamber of Commerce.
So many businesses are sort of in that phase of kind of really short-term business planning. But why should they consider kind of exporting for the first time?
I think, you know, Gary, regardless of what's happening, we would always encourage companies to export for the first time. Now probably isn't the, you know, the kind of best time because of pandemic and EU exit. Nevertheless, is ever a good time. What I would always say to any business looking to embark on any kind of export strategy is that they must be serious about it. They must have the complete backing of senior management, and they have to have full commitment in terms of time and resource. Got to have an exportable product which has a clear, which differentiates from anything else in the market they're targeting. And they would hopefully need to look at developing a documented export plan. They also have to understand that, you know, this is a slow burn thing. You know, it's not an overnight return, especially during these times. And of course, Gary, we're available to kind of support them along that journey. Yeah, and where does a business go in Worcestershire if it wants that support? Come and talk to us. Obviously, Gary, you know, we are the government department to support international trade. We can begin by, you know, conducting a diagnostic on the business's export readiness. We can cover things like their products and services, their people and experience, sales and marketing, planning and market knowledge, financials, operations, all that kind of stuff. And then obviously kind of tailor some kind of a support package to cover those specific areas that require the most support. And we can obviously deliver on an action plan for them and obviously give them access to our overseas network. And our local specialist advisors, we can help in many ways, from things like, you know, e-commerce, internationalisation, localisation, culture, routes to market, IPR, and so on and so forth. It's all there, quite frankly. And, along with the Chamber of Commerce Commercial Service, we offer quite a robust, you know, kind of product to help businesses export for the first time. That's fantastic. Thank you, Nick, and thank you, Phoebe.
Obviously, you can get that support at either Worcestershire Business Central or the Department for International Trade website. What you can see there is that despite the kind of economic conditions, there's plenty of international advice for you to export, but also we're getting plenty of interest in the UK as a location for inward investment coming into the county. It's been good to do this session and really helpful in terms of positioning Worcestershire as a great place to do business. In this section, we're looking at commercial property and the impact that COVID's had on the economy. We're really keen to focus on the impacts that have happened not just to the sectors, but also to the commercial property market. And joining me, we've got John Dillon and Phoebe from the Worcestershire LEP. So, John, you know, how has COVID kind of changed the way that businesses operate in their commercial property?
Well, I think there's been a massive change, really. It's interesting, when we first sort of did our podcast together, we were mid-lockdown, and it was interesting just to see, you know, were people going to sort of enjoy coming back to the office or not? And it's interesting, after that first lockdown, certainly my staff were really keen to get back to the office. So the question that has been raised for me for several months is the office market dead? The answer is absolutely not. I do feel that we'll have to do things differently going forward. So, you know, certainly in my office, we were able to socially distance and just use common sense, really. And I think we've got to think about the sort of makeup of the offices in Worcester. We don't have lots of large office blocks. They're generally SME businesses on business estates. So they're able to space out. So, yeah, it's changed, but I do not feel the office is dead by any means.
Yeah. And how has the Worcestershire LEP adapted in its working conditions as well, Phoebe?
So we are predominantly at the moment working from home, but we have access to the office on a daily basis. So we're kind of working on a rota system. So we have fewer people in the office, but actually, you know, realistically, we are able to really socially distance. There's hand sanitizer everywhere. And I think we're kind of seeing that across the piece, really, that's sort of how businesses are adapting.
And John, so in the podcast, we were very much discussing about how businesses were operating, how they were restarting, but how have also people looked at that commercial property market thinking about, do I need the space or don't I need the space, or how do I use that space?
Yeah.
What have you seen?
I think people have certainly looked at that. I mean, moving away from the offices for a minute, it's interesting that the industrial market is really strong. So inquiries just haven't fallen off at all. And if you start looking at what is likely to happen, we're going to get redundancies, we're going to get the end of the furlough. People actually have opportunity to actually get redundancy money, and the biggest thing that I found in the last recession was that people wanted small industrial units. It's the start of enterprise, really. So I think that part of the market is quite interesting at the moment, and it's what I've been saying on the board of the LEP for a couple of years now. We need small industrial units in Worcestershire still, so that message certainly hasn't stopped by any means.
And John, you know, sort of we focused a bit on kind of Worcester, but you do a report that covers the whole of the county. You know, what was that picking up before COVID, and what does that sort of look like now?
The report was, you know, very strong in the industrial sector, small particularly. Mid-size is still a shortage, so we need those properties to come forward. Retail, we didn't touch too much on our report, and that's a whole sort of different area, and I think that's the one that really needs attention. But as I've said on the board of the LEP for a while, I think we really ought to think about bringing offices into town centres, city centres, and I know that's been discussed as part of the bid, which is great news. So if we can bring those suits into town centres, city centres, it helps cafes, restaurants, bars, and those other sort of occupiers in the city.
Phoebe, we were sort of discussing this when we were talking about retail, really, that changing face. How do you think the commercial property market can kind of support that high street and town centre?
I echo exactly what John just said, and certainly what Sam referenced earlier. I think, bringing people into the city centre, regardless of the reasons for it, is always going to be a positive thing. And certainly if we can bring people in during the Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, that's great. I think we're certainly going to start seeing more sort of hubs set up. Certainly we've seen lots of co-working spaces reopening recently after the pandemic, and people are really keen to get out there and just step away from the dining room table or whatever makeshift office they've had for the last sort of 5-6 months and be able to go and work and engage with other people. So I really think we're going to start seeing a trend of I hope certainly that we'll start seeing a trend where that will happen more and more.
And certainly talking to residential agents, they're sort of flat out in terms of busy selling. They're getting lots of inquiries from people who are in city centres moving into a sort of more rural urban existence. But from a commercial point of view, is this the time for investors to look at the market?
It is. And it's interesting that, you sort of talk about that residential market. I think one of the interesting things that we've got to try and think about is in Worcestershire, we have a lot of people who commute into Birmingham. So one wonders if that will be quite as strong in the future. So we start looking at that dynamic and saying, okay, I think Worcestershire's got a great opportunity, and we've heard it in the national press about what's called office hubs. So we don't go into Birmingham city centre. I think people have realised that they don't want to do the commute. I did it for 10 years, and an hour and a half to Birmingham, an hour and a half back is just too much. So I think that probably that sort of feeling has changed with people, and I think we've got a great opportunity in Worcestershire, because I know when I worked in Birmingham, lots of people live in Worcester and commute. So if we can create areas, flexibility, yes, so that you can work at home maybe 2 or 3 days a week, but you've got somewhere that you can go in and meet your colleagues or have a meeting. And I think we should be putting out our sort of flag along that M5 corridor, and particularly with Parkway Station, to say, come to Worcestershire. And I think that's really a positive message that we can get out there quite early on.
And sort of businesses who are currently located, say, in Birmingham city centre or other kind of more densely populated areas, are you starting to see inquiries from them who are thinking about how do we perhaps invest and create a sort of regional hub in somewhere like Worcester or Redditch or Kidderminster?
It's a little early for inquiries, but I can certainly, reading the press in Birmingham, there's a lot of sort of critical dates coming up. They've got break dates or they've got renewals coming up, and I think they'll start to consider, do they need to be in the city centre? And I think it's for us then to sort of say, if you're not going to be in the city centre, what about the centre of the country on those motorway junctions and with our great railway links? So too soon to sort of talk of inquiries, because I think the whole office world is just being turned upside down. But I think going forward, there will be more inquiries, which we've just got to pick up on.
And Phoebe, coming to you in terms of, is that the sort of feedback you're getting from our local businesses and inquiries?
Yeah, certainly. I think we are getting lots of some out-of-county inquiries coming through. So, and most of those are as a result of the pandemic, that either people are looking to maybe downsize because they don't need as much space, but they want to be more close to home, as John said. That people aren't just that keen to do the commute anymore. Or we are getting, certainly I've seen a number of inquiries come through for large warehouse space and things. So people are looking, they want to be able to build and grow their business, but they want to do it in a socially distanced way. And so they recognise that Worcestershire's got a lot to offer in terms of our motorway and our network. So we are seeing those inquiries coming through, not as much as John mentioned, the office, but certainly for the tin sheds, should we say. Certainly we're getting a number of those coming through already.
Brilliant. And how do you see the market in the sort of probably the next 12 to 18 months in terms of, do you think inquiries will pick up, or where do you see the balance coming?
Well, I agree totally with Phoebe that those large industrial requirements will continue. It's not rocket science. We're in the middle of the country. We've got great communication links, so that'll continue. And we're doing a lot of storage and distribution. I know we'd like to be doing a lot of manufacturing. The inquiries aren't as strong for that, but certainly for storage and distribution, they've been flat out, and they haven't stopped for me during the COVID break at all. Office market changing, yes, but I just don't think it'll affect us too much in Worcestershire for the reasons I said earlier, that we don't have lots of high-rise office buildings. We've got lots of business parks, SMEs, And I think there's a sort of degree of sort of let's keep the space we've got, let's just use it differently. So I think so I don't see a panic in the office market at all. But it's interesting that the market is quite buoyant because the banks are still willing to lend. So freehold property is very much name of the game at the moment, and inquiry levels are pre-COVID levels, ironically for offices, but also, yes, for industrial, as we spoke about earlier.
And that really gives us an indication into the kind of jobs market, I suppose, going forward, that transport distribution online, but also the kind of changing way that office will perform. Do you think that kind of commercial property often then maps the kind of what the jobs are available in the market?
Absolutely, and I think it's that remembering that 2008 recession, that people like those small business units, new enterprises. I've got a little business that I'm going to put on the internet, but I need somewhere to store my goods. Not big stuff, but little stuff that is on short-term basis. Nobody's going to sign a 5-year lease, but people will sign a 6-month lease and see, look, let's try it to see how we get on. So we need more of that, and we need landlords to be flexible, which I know they will be as a result of the last 6 months.
And Phoebe, where do people go if they've got an inquiry or a kind of property need, and how do we work with our partners to kind of service those?
So we encourage all businesses to make contact through the Growth Hub. So that's Worcestershire Business Central. So that's business-central.co.uk, and they can contact us through Invest in Worcestershire as well. So that's investinworcestershire.com. And I think what we will find when those inquiries come in, they either come to myself or one of the team, and we work and engage with people like John, but also the district and the local city council as well, to identify what sort of properties they have available, and then we're in a position to be able to hopefully service that inquiry.
So working with those districts. And finally, John, when we did the podcast, we were very much talking about how you and the team had adapted to kind of service that client base. Give us a flavour of where you are now as a team and some of the things that you've put in place to support your people.
Well, we're a team of 14, so we just have a rule in the office that there's no more than 7 people in the office. We space out, and we've been spending a lot of time planning. Unfortunately, I knew that my market would adjust. It was due an adjustment. Little did I know it was going to be COVID, but I found in my sort of 30 years of doing commercial property, what goes up must come down. And so we've been sort of ready for that as a team, and just looking at the sectors that are busy and just making sure that we're getting those inquiries and feeding them back to landlords. We spent a lot of time with landlords as well about payment of rent. That first quarter was tricky. That March quarter day was difficult. What do we do? What's fair, Mr. Dillon? And I had a lot of discussions with my landlords there. Thankfully, we've just had the September quarter, and we're 90% rental payment. So, most people are paying their rent, which is great. So, commercial property is still very strong to invest in, undoubtedly, but it's changing, and that's quite good in actual fact that it does change. So, we've just got to sort of seize those opportunities.
Brilliant. Thank you both. That's the end of this section, and it's really looked at the kind of dynamic business community that we've got here in Worcestershire and we're trying to create. That adaptation in terms of COVID, but also that kind of, how we kind of work safely. And I think that seems to be the kind of buzzword of this section in terms of, the ability to adapt, the ability to work safely. And certainly we'd encourage you to give us the feedback, go and look for that support and advice. Certainly I'd encourage people, if you've got a property inquiry, talk to your agent, talk to your landlord. That's really the first place and port of call. And obviously Business Central, there is sort of support about how you adapt that business. This has been a great session, and I look forward to discussing this topic as we go through the next few weeks and months. Thank you.